The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning. The kind of morning where frost still clings to the windows and your breath fogs in the air inside your own kitchen. I stood at my grandmother's old farmhouse table, the one with the groove worn into the edge from decades of her kneading bread, and stared at the return address. Volfek and Associates, attorneys at law. My brother's name printed below it in neat, impersonal type. I had not heard from Marcus in 4 years. 4 years of silence so complete it felt deliberate, carved out like someone taking a knife to a photograph and cutting around a single face until it falls away. And now this. A legal letter with my name typed across the front. I set my coffee down and opened it slowly. The paper was heavy, expensive, the kind that makes a sound when you unfold it. Inside, 3 pages of legal language that took me 2 full readings to understand. But when I did, the words landed with the force of something I should have seen coming, but somehow never did. Marcus needed me to sign away my rights to grandmother's trust. The trust she had set up before she died, the one neither of us had known the full details of until now, the one that required both of our signatures to access, the one worth $1.2 million. I stood there for a long time, the letter trembling slightly in my hands, not from anger, not from shock, from something quieter, the kind of feeling that comes when a truth you have been living with finally shows its face and asks to be named. My brother had spent 4 years pretending I did not exist, and now he needed something only I could give him. The story does not begin with that letter, though. It begins much earlier, in the small Virginia town where Marcus and I grew up. A place where everyone knew your name and your family's business before you could spell either one. Our grandmother, Eleanor Mitchell, was a fixture in that town. She ran the local bookstore for 43 years, the kind with creaking wooden floors and the smell of old paper that settles into your clothes. She lived above it, in a 2-bedroom apartment with windows that overlooked Main Street. When our parents died in a car accident, Marcus was 12 and I was 9. Grandmother took us in without hesitation. She cleared out her sewing room and turned it into a bedroom for me. She gave Marcus the guest room. She taught us how to make her blackberry jam every summer and how to balance the store's books every month. She showed us that family was not just about blood. It was about showing up. Marcus was the golden child from the start. Tall, charming, quick with a smile that made adults trust him instantly. He played football in high school and dated the homecoming queen. He was accepted to Duke on a partial scholarship and left for college with everyone in town telling him how proud they were. Grandmother framed his acceptance letter and hung it in the bookstore. I was different, quieter. I spent most of my time in the bookstore's back corner, reading everything I could get my hands on. I helped grandmother with inventory and learned how to order books from distributors. I loved the rhythm of that place, the way it smelled like coffee and old pages, and the way sunlight came through the front windows in thick golden bands every afternoon. When I graduated high school, I did not go to college right away. Grandmother's health was declining. The bookstore needed someone to run it while she recovered from her first round of chemotherapy. Marcus was in his junior year at Duke by then, too busy with his fraternity and his business degree to come home often. So I stayed. I learned the store inside and out. I learned how to talk to the book reps, and how to host readings, and how to make the place feel alive, even when grandmother was too weak to come downstairs. She told me once, late at night when I brought her tea in her bedroom, that I had her same love for words. She said I understood what a bookstore really was. Not just a business, but a place where people came to find pieces of themselves they did not know were missing. Marcus graduated from Duke and moved to Charlotte. He got a job at a financial firm and started climbing fast. He wore expensive suits and drove a car that cost more than grandmother's entire year of revenue from the bookstore. When he visited, which was rare, he would walk through the store with a tight smile and make comments about how quaint it all was. How nostalgic. The distance between us grew slowly, the way a river carves through stone, so gradual you do not notice until the gap is too wide to cross. He stopped calling, except on holidays. He stopped asking about the store or grandmother's health. When I would mention something about my life, He would nod politely and change the subject to his latest promotion, or the condo he was buying, or the clients he was impressing. The break came at Thanksgiving dinner 4 years ago. Grandmother had been in remission for 6 months. It felt like we could breathe again. Marcus drove up from Charlotte with his girlfriend, a woman named Stephanie, who wore heels so high she had to hold onto his arm to walk across the uneven sidewalk. They arrived late, and Marcus immediately started complaining about the traffic and how he had to be back by Sunday for a client meeting. Dinner was tense. Stephanie kept checking her phone. Marcus barely looked at grandmother when she asked about his work. And then, over dessert, he said it. "Grandma, I think you should consider selling the bookstore." The room went silent. Grandmother set down her fork slowly. "Why would I do that?" she asked, her voice steady. Marcus leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "Because it's not profitable. It's barely breaking even. The building alone is worth more than what the business generates in 5 years. You could sell it, invest the money properly, and actually have something to retire on." I stared at him. That store is her life's work. He looked at me like I had said something painfully naive. "It's a dying business model, Claire. Independent bookstores can't compete anymore. She's pouring money into something with no future." Grandmother's hand shook slightly as she picked up her water glass. "That store has been in this town for over 4 decades. It matters to people." Marcus sighed, the kind of sigh that says he is being patient with people who do not understand basic economics. "I'm trying to help you make a smart financial decision. You're not getting any younger, and Claire certainly isn't equipped to run it long term." The words hit like a slap. I felt my face go hot. "I've been running it for 3 years, I said quietly. "Running it into the ground," Marcus said, not unkindly, but with the casual cruelty of someone stating a fact. "You never even went to college, Claire. You don't have any business training, you're just playing store manager because you didn't have any other options." Stephanie shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Grandmother's face went very still. "Marcus," grandmother said, her voice low, "that is enough." But he did not stop. "I'm being honest. Someone has to be. You're holding on to this place out of sentimentality, and Claire is enabling it because she doesn't know any better. If you cared about your future, you would sell now while the building still has value." I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Get out." Marcus blinked. "What?" "Get out of this house." My voice was shaking, but steady. "You don't get to come here once or twice a year and tell us how to live our lives. You don't get to insult grandmother's legacy and act like you're doing us a favor." Marcus stood slowly, his face hardening. "I'm trying to help." "No," grandmother said quietly. "You're trying to control. And Claire is right, I think you should leave." The look on Marcus's face was something I will never forget. Not hurt, not shame, just cold, calculated anger. The kind that says this conversation is over and so is whatever relationship existed before it. He grabbed his coat. Stephanie followed without a word. He did not say goodbye. He did not look back. That was the last time I saw him. Grandmother died 18 months later. The cancer came back, aggressive and fast. I took care of her in those final months. I closed the bookstore 2 afternoons a week, so I could drive her to appointments. I sat beside her hospital bed and read to her when she was too weak to hold a book herself. I held her hand when she took her last breath. Marcus did not come to the funeral. He sent flowers. Expensive ones. White lilies with a card that read, "With deepest sympathy." No personal message. No phone call. Nothing. I stood at her grave with a small group of people from town. The librarian who used to order books through us. The retired teacher who came in every week for mysteries. The young mother who brought her kids for story time. People who loved grandmother not because she was successful or wealthy, but because she showed up for them. After the funeral, I inherited the bookstore. It was written clearly in her will. She left me the building, the inventory, everything. Marcus got a small monetary bequest, enough to cover the cost of the funeral arrangements he did not help with. I kept the store running. It was not easy. The margins were thin, the competition from online retailers was relentless. But I loved it. I loved the customers who became friends. I loved hosting book clubs and poetry readings. I loved the way children's faces lit up when they found a book they could not put down. I thought about Marcus sometimes. Wondered if he ever regretted what he said that night. Wondered if he thought about grandmother at all. But I never reached out. And he never did either. Until that letter arrived. I read the letter 3 times, trying to understand exactly what it was asking. The language was dense, full of legal terms that felt designed to obscure rather than clarify. But the core message was simple. Grandmother had set up a trust years before she died. A trust funded by investments she had made quietly, without telling either of us. It had grown substantially over the years, compounding in ways that surprised even the lawyers handling her estate. The trust was set up with specific conditions. It required both Marcus and me to sign off on any withdrawals. Both of us. If either of us refused, the trust would remain locked until we either agreed or until both of us passed away, at which point it would go to charity. Marcus wanted to access the trust. He needed it, the letter said, for an investment opportunity. Time-sensitive. High return. The kind of language that sounded impressive, but meant nothing without context. The letter requested that I sign a waiver, giving Marcus full control of the trust funds. It assured me that this was in both of our best interests, that Marcus had the financial expertise to manage the funds properly. That I would still receive my share, of course, once the investment matured. I set the letter down and walked to the window. Outside, Main Street was quiet. A few cars passed. The hardware store across the street was setting up a display of garden tools. Spring was coming. I thought about calling Marcus. I thought about asking him why. After 4 years of silence, he thought I would just sign away something grandmother had carefully structured to protect both of us. But I did not call. Instead, I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. 3 days later, Marcus called me directly. His number appeared on my phone screen, and for a moment I just stared at it. Then I answered, Claire. His voice was smooth, professional, the voice he probably used with clients. Did you get the letter from my attorney? I did. Good. I know it's a lot of legal language, but the bottom line is simple. We need to access the trust, and I need you to sign the authorization. We? I said. Or you? A pause. It benefits both of us, but I have an opportunity right now that requires capital. It's time-sensitive. What kind of opportunity? A real estate development project. High return, low risk. But I need to move quickly, or the opportunity closes. I looked out the window again. A customer was walking toward the bookstore, a tote bag over her shoulder. Marcus, I said quietly, you haven't spoken to me in 4 years. Silence. I know things have been complicated, he said finally. But this is business. This is about making smart decisions with the assets Grandma left us. She didn't just leave us assets, I said. She left us a responsibility, and she made sure we both had to agree before either of us could touch it. Claire, I don't have time for sentimentality right now. I need you to sign the papers. I'll think about it, I said. There's nothing to think about. It's a simple signature. Then you won't mind waiting while I consider it. His voice changed. Colder. Don't do this, Claire. Don't be stubborn just because you're still angry about something that happened years ago. I'm not being stubborn, I said. I'm being careful. The way grandmother wanted us to be. He hung up without saying goodbye. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus called 4 more times. Each call was shorter, tenser. He tried different approaches. First, he was reasonable, explaining the investment opportunity in detail. Then he was frustrated, accusing me of being petty. Then he was angry, telling me I was sabotaging both of our futures out of spite. I did not sign. Instead, I did something else. I contacted grandmother's estate attorney, a man named Robert Chen, who had handled her affairs for decades. I asked him to explain the trust in detail. Not the legal jargon, but the intention behind it. Robert met me at the bookstore on a Thursday afternoon. He was in his 60s, with gray hair and the kind of steady presence that made you feel like everything would be handled properly. We sat in the reading corner, surrounded by shelves of books. He spread the trust documents across the table between us. Your grandmother, he said, was very clear about what she wanted. She knew Marcus was ambitious. She knew he would want to use the money for investments, for career advancement, and she was not opposed to that, necessarily. But she also knew you. She knew you would stay here, keep the bookstore running, be part of this community. She wanted to make sure that neither of you could make a unilateral decision that might harm the other. He pointed to a clause in the document. This provision requires both signatures for any withdrawal. It's not just a formality, it's a safeguard. She wanted you both to have to communicate, to agree, to work together. I looked at the clause. The language was clear. Both parties must consent in writing to any distribution of funds. What happens if we never agree? I asked. The trust remains intact. The investments continue to grow. And when both of you pass away, the entire amount goes to the literacy foundation your grandmother supported for years. I sat back in my chair. She knew Marcus and I might not reconcile. Robert nodded. She hoped you would, but she was realistic. And she wanted to make sure that if the relationship was broken, the money would at least do some good in the world. I looked around the bookstore. The afternoon light was coming through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. This place had been grandmother's dream, and she had trusted me to keep it alive. What would you do? I asked Robert quietly. He smiled slightly. I can't tell you what to do, Claire. But I can tell you what your grandmother told me when she set this up. She said, I want my grandchildren to either learn to work together or I want my money to help children learn to read. Those were her exact words. Marcus showed up at the bookstore 3 weeks after that first letter. I was restocking the fiction section when I heard the bell above the door chime. I turned and saw him standing in the entrance, looking oddly out of place in his expensive suit and polished shoes. For a moment, neither of us spoke. He looked older. There were lines around his eyes that had not been there 4 years ago. He looked tired. Claire, he said finally. Marcus? He walked further into the store, his shoes clicking on the hardwood floor. He looked around, taking in the shelves, the reading corner, the old cash register that grandmother had refused to replace even when it started sticking. It looks the same, he said. I haven't changed much. He turned to look at me. We need to talk. About the trust. Yes. I set down the books I was holding and led him to the reading corner. We sat across from each other at the same table, where Robert had explained the trust documents. Marcus folded his hands on the table. I know I haven't been in touch. I know things ended badly between us. But this is important, Claire. I have an opportunity that could set me up for life, but I need capital. Real capital. Tell me about it, I said. He launched into an explanation. A development project in Charleston, luxury condos on the waterfront. He had investors lined up, but he needed to show he had skin in the game. He needed to commit his own capital to secure the deal. And if I sign away my rights to the trust, you get your capital, I said. You would still get your share, he said quickly. I'm not asking you to give up anything, I'm asking you to let me manage it. The investment would double, maybe triple the value. You would benefit too. What if it fails? It won't fail. I've done my due diligence. The projections are solid. I looked at him for a long time. Marcus, do you remember what you said at Thanksgiving 4 years ago? His face tightened. Claire, that was a long time ago. You told grandmother to sell the bookstore. You told her it was a failing business. You told her I was not equipped to run it. I was trying to give her financial advice, he said defensively. You were trying to control her life. The same way you're trying to control the trust now. His jaw clenched. This is different. This is about making smart financial decisions with money that's sitting there doing nothing. It's not doing nothing, I said quietly. It's growing, safely, the way grandmother wanted it to. Marcus leaned forward. Claire, I need this. Do you understand? I need this money. The investment window closes in 2 weeks. If I don't move now, I lose everything I've been working toward. And what have you been working toward? I asked. What is this really about? He sat back, frustration clear on his face. It's about succeeding. About building something. About not being stuck in a dying town running a dying bookstore. The words hung in the air between us. There it is, I said softly. That's what you really think, about this town, about the bookstore, about me. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. You've always thought I was wasting my life here. You've always thought I was less than you because I didn't leave, didn't chase money, didn't try to become someone else. He looked away. You could have had more. I have everything I need, I said. I have a business that matters to people. I have a community. I have work that has meaning. What do you have, Marcus? His face went red. I have a career. I have success. I have prospects. But you don't have family, I said quietly. You cut me out. You cut grandmother out. You didn't even come to her funeral. I was working. I couldn't get away. You chose not to, I said. The same way you chose not to call, not to visit, not to be part of our lives. And now you show up, after 4 years of silence, and expect me to just hand over something grandmother carefully protected. Marcus stood abruptly. So that's it? You're going to be vindictive? You're going to punish me for things I said years ago? I'm not punishing you, I said, standing to face him. I'm respecting grandmother's wishes. She set up the trust the way she did for a reason. She wanted us to work together. She wanted us to rebuild what was broken. But you can't even admit that anything is broken. So you're saying no. I'm saying I won't sign away my rights just because you need money for an investment. If you want to access the trust, we do it together. We both agree. We both have a say, the way grandmother intended. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he shook his head. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. He turned and walked toward the door. Before he left, he looked back. When you realize you cost us both a fortune, don't come looking for sympathy. The door closed behind him. The bell chimed once, then silence. The weeks after Marcus left were strange. I kept expecting him to call, to try again with a different angle, but there was only silence, the kind that feels heavy, like storm clouds gathering. I threw myself into the bookstore. Spring was coming, and with it the annual book fair we hosted for local schools. I spent evenings organizing donations, reaching out to publishers for review copies, coordinating with teachers. The work was endless, but it was the kind of endless that feels like purpose. One afternoon, while I was arranging a display of children's books, Mrs. Henderson came in. She had been one of grandmother's closest friends, a retired librarian who still volunteered at the elementary school. She walked slowly now, her cane tapping softly against the floor. "Claire," she said, settling into the reading chair with a soft sigh. "I heard Marcus was in town. News traveled fast in small towns," I nodded. "He was, briefly." She studied my face with the kind of knowing look that comes from decades of watching children grow up. "Your grandmother worried about him, you know, not in the way she worried about you." I sat down across from her. "What do you mean?" "She never worried you would lose yourself," Mrs. Henderson said. "But Marcus, he was always looking for something outside himself. She used to say he was like a man standing in a river trying to catch his reflection. The harder he grabbed, the more it slipped away." The image settled into me. She never told me that. "She did not want you to carry his burden," Mrs. Henderson said, "but she also knew that one day, you might be the only one who could help him see what he had been missing." After she left, I stood at the window watching the street. A young couple walked by pushing a stroller. The hardware store owner was sweeping his sidewalk. The mailman waved as he passed. This was the life Marcus had run from. The ordinary rhythms of people who knew each other's names, the slow accumulation of small kindnesses, the unglamorous work of showing up day after day. I wondered if he would ever understand what he had given up in his chase for something bigger. The weeks turned into months. I received 2 more letters from Marcus's attorney, each more urgent than the last. The language shifted from requests to demands to barely veiled threats about legal action. I forwarded them all to Robert Chen and let him handle the responses. "He is getting desperate," Robert told me over the phone one evening. "The investment window must be closing soon." "Is there anything he can do legally?" I asked. "Any way to force access to the trust?" "No," Robert said firmly. "Your grandmother structured it very carefully, both signatures or nothing. He has no legal recourse." I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt sad. Not for the money, but for the relationship that had come to this. A brother and sister communicating only through lawyers. A family reduced to legal documents and defensive strategies. In May, the bookstore hosted a reading by a debut novelist, a young woman from the next county who had written about growing up in rural Virginia. 30 people showed up, filling the reading corner and spilling into the aisles. She read passages about her grandmother's garden, about summer evenings catching fireflies, about the particular silence of country roads at dawn. After the reading, as I was cleaning up, I found myself thinking about Marcus again. wondering if he remembered catching fireflies, if he remembered the way the fields looked after rain, if any of those memories surfaced when he walked through his expensive condo in Charlotte, or if he had trained himself to forget. 6 months passed. I did not hear from Marcus again. The bookstore continued on, steady and quiet. I hosted a reading by a local poet. I started a summer reading program for kids. I repainted the front window display. Then, on a cold morning in November, Robert Chen called. "Claire," he said, his voice careful, "I need to let you know about something. Marcus's investment fell through." I sat down slowly. What happened? The development project he was pursuing. It collapsed. The primary investor pulled out, and the whole thing unraveled. Marcus had committed personal funds, borrowed heavily against his assets. He's in financial trouble. I closed my eyes. How bad? Bad enough that he's facing bankruptcy. He's trying to liquidate everything to cover his debts. I sat in silence for a moment, processing. "If you had signed those papers," Robert said quietly, "the trust would have been part of his assets. It would have been seized by creditors. You both would have lost everything your grandmother set aside." I looked out the window of the bookstore. Snow was starting to fall, soft and steady. "What happens now?" I asked. "The trust remains protected. It's separate from his personal finances. It continues to grow. And when both of you are ready, if you ever are, it will be there." After I hung up, I sat for a long time in the quiet store. I thought about grandmother, about the way she always seemed to see around corners, to understand people better than they understood themselves. She had known. She had known Marcus would chase success at any cost. She had known I would stay rooted, and she had protected us both, in the only way she could. The next day, I drove to the cemetery. It had been months since I had visited. The grass was brown, winter settling in. I stood at grandmother's grave with my hands in my pockets, breath fogging in the cold air. "You knew," I said out loud. "You knew this would happen." The wind moved through the bare trees. A crow called from somewhere distant. I stood there for a long time, feeling the cold seep through my jacket. "I do not know if I can fix this," I said. "I do not know if he wants to be fixed." But even as I said it, I knew that was not my responsibility. I could not fix Marcus. I could only choose whether to keep the door open for him if he ever decided to walk through it on his own terms. When I got back to the bookstore, there was a package waiting at the door. No return address, just my name written in familiar handwriting. I brought it inside and opened it carefully. Inside was a book. An old hardcover copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, the same edition grandmother used to read to us when we were kids. The cover was worn, the pages yellowed. A note fell out when I opened it. It was from Marcus, the handwriting shaky, uncertain. This was hers. She left it in my apartment years ago. I kept meaning to return it, but never did. "I think she would want you to have it. I think she would want it to be in the store where it belongs, where people like us belonged. I am sorry for forgetting that." I sat down with the book in my lap and cried. Not from sadness, not from anger, just from the weight of everything that had been broken and might one day begin to heal. Marcus called me 2 weeks later, late at night. His voice was rough, like he had been crying or maybe just exhausted beyond tears. "Claire," he said, "just my name." "I heard what happened," I said. "I'm sorry." He laughed bitterly. "Are you? I thought you'd be happy." "You were right, I was wrong. You can say it." "I don't want to say it, Marcus. I never wanted you to fail." Silence on the other end. Then quietly, "I lost everything." "Not everything," I said. "The trust is still there. Grandmother made sure of that." "Because you wouldn't sign," his voice broke. "You saved it. You saved both of us, and I was so angry at you for it." I felt my own eyes sting. She knew Marcus. She knew we would both need to be protected from ourselves sometimes. "I don't know what to do now," he said. "I don't know where to go from here." I took a breath. "You start over. You rebuild. You do it differently this time." "How?" "By remembering what matters. By understanding that success isn't just about money or status or proving something to people who don't care about you anyway." He was quiet for so long I thought he had hung up. "I'm sorry," he said finally, "for what I said, for how I treated you and Grandma, for all of it." "I know. Can I come see you?" he asked. "Not for the trust, not for money, just to see you." I looked around the bookstore. The same place where grandmother had built something real. The same place where I had learned that worth is measured in things that cannot be counted. Yes, I said. You can come. Marcus arrived on a Saturday morning. He drove up in an older car, nothing like the luxury sedan he used to have. He was wearing jeans and a simple jacket. When he walked into the bookstore, he looked smaller somehow. Not broken, but humbled. We spent the day together, not talking about the trust or money or the past, just being siblings again. I showed him the changes I had made to the store. He helped me organize a shipment of new books. We had lunch at the diner down the street. In the afternoon, we walked to the cemetery. We stood at grandmother's grave in silence. The stone was simple. Eleanor Mitchell, beloved grandmother, friend to all who love stories. She knew, Marcus said quietly, she knew I would screw up. She knew I would need you to stop me. She knew we both needed each other, I said. In different ways. He looked at me. What do we do now? We figure it out together, I said. The way she wanted us to. That was 6 months ago. Marcus moved back to town. Not permanently, but often enough. He got a job at a regional bank, nothing glamorous, but steady. He rented a small apartment above the coffee shop. The first few months were awkward. We were like strangers learning each other's language again. He would stop by the bookstore and we would make small talk about the weather, about books he was reading, about nothing important. But slowly, carefully, we started to remember how to be siblings. He helped me with the bookstore's accounts one evening. I had always handled them myself, but there were some financial projections I could not quite figure out. He sat with me for hours, explaining concepts patiently, the way grandmother used to when she taught us to make change at the register. You have done well with this place, he said quietly, looking at the spreadsheet. Better than I ever gave you credit for. It is not about profit margins, I said. It is about sustainability, about being here when people need us. He nodded slowly. I am starting to understand that. One Saturday, Marcus showed up early and asked if he could volunteer for the children's story time. I was surprised, but I said yes. I watched him sit on the floor with a group of 8-year-olds, reading The Giving Tree with a gentleness I had not seen in him for years. After the kids left, he stayed behind, straightening the picture books on the shelves. I remember Grandma reading that book to us, he said. I remember thinking the tree was foolish for giving everything away. And now? He looked at me. Now I think the tree understood something I did not. That giving is not about losing. It is about becoming something different, something whole. We talk now, really talk. About grandmother, about our parents, about the years we wasted being strangers to each other. About what we want for the future. He told me about the months after the investment collapsed. How he had sat in his empty condo, everything worth anything sold to pay debts, and realized he had built his entire identity on things that could be taken away. The car, the clothes, the title, the status. All of it gone, and with it, he thought, himself. But I was still here, he said. Underneath all of that, I was still here. I just had not looked in so long. I did not recognize what I found. I told him about the years after he left. How I had felt abandoned, but also, strangely, freer. How I had built a life I was proud of without needing anyone's approval. How I had learned that worth is not something you earn from others. It is something you cultivate in yourself. I was so afraid of being like you, he admitted one evening. We were closing up the bookstore, turning off lights, checking locks. I was afraid that if I stayed here, I would disappear, that I would be ordinary. And what do you think now? He smiled sadly. I think I spent so much energy trying not to disappear that I erased myself anyway. The person I became was not me. It was just a performance. The trust sits untouched, growing quietly, waiting for the day when we both agree on what to do with it. Maybe we will use it to expand the bookstore. Maybe we will donate some to the Literacy Foundation. Maybe we will do something else entirely. But whatever we do, we will do it together. We will do it with intention. We will do it in a way that honors the woman who loved us enough to protect us from ourselves. Last week, Marcus proposed something I did not expect. He suggested we start a small scholarship fund through the trust. Something for local kids who want to pursue education but cannot afford it. Kids who might otherwise give up on their dreams because money decides their future. We could help them, he said. Not all of the trust, just enough to make a difference. The way Grandma made a difference for us. I thought about it for days. The idea felt right in a way that accessing the trust for personal gain never had. It felt like it honored not just grandmother's memory, but her values. Education, community, opportunity. We met with Robert Chen to discuss the details. How much we could give without depleting the principal. How to structure the scholarship criteria. How to make sure it reached the kids who needed it most. When we left his office, Marcus turned to me on the sidewalk. "Thank you," he said, "for not giving up on me. For protecting something I was too blind to see the value of." "I did not do it for you," I said honestly. "I did it because it was right. Because grandmother taught me that some things are worth protecting, even when it costs you something." "It cost you your relationship with me," he said quietly. "No," I said. "You walking away cost us that. Me standing my ground saved the possibility that one day we might find our way back." He nodded. We stood there for a moment, watching the town move around us. The ordinary miracle of people living their lives, going to work, running errands, building something that mattered in the spaces between moments. Karma is not about revenge. It is not about punishment or cosmic justice. Karma is simply the natural consequence of our choices, the seeds we plant, the harvest we reap. Marcus planted ambition without roots. He chased success without substance. And when the storm came, there was nothing to anchor him. I planted patience. I chose connection over climbing. I stayed when leaving felt easier. And when the storm came for Marcus, I had ground solid enough to stand on. Grandmother knew this. She knew that family is not just about being related. It is about being accountable to each other. It is about protecting each other even when we do not deserve it. It is about giving second chances when first chances fail. The bookstore is still here. The town is still here. Marcus is still here. And I am still here. We are not perfect, we are not healed, but we are together. And that is enough. If you are listening to this story and wondering what it means, let me tell you. It means that the people who cut you out of their lives often come back when they need something. It means that saying no to the wrong things protects you from devastation you cannot yet see. It means that the patience you practice today becomes the foundation that holds you steady tomorrow. It means that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to give someone the very thing they think they need most. Not out of spite, not out of vengeance, but out of wisdom. Out of protection. Out of a deeper understanding of what love really requires. Grandmother's trust was not just about money, it was about trust itself. The kind you build slowly. The kind you earn through presence, not absence. The kind that holds even when everything else falls apart. So tell me in the comments, what does loyalty mean to you, and where are you listening from today?